Welcome, everyone, to the Mythic Life podcast. I am your host, Eric Brumett, and I am so excited for today because I get to reconnect with an old friend of mine, somebody very dear to my heart. He almost even officiated my first wedding, and I've known you, Dada Rainjitananda, since I started my practice in New York. I remember meeting you at the first healing center that I worked out of, and you were running meditations there and some wonderful events. And I just want to thank you for joining me today. Hello, Dada. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also very glad to be here with you, Eric. Time passes, but somehow, maybe with the help of social media, we kept a little bit connection, but it's good to reconnect like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's that spark. You came across one of our mutual friends out in LA, Elian Kirker.
Yes, right. Yes.
Who was running meditations at that time and doing a lot of work with the chakra system. And he was a good friend of mine as well. So, you know, here on this podcast, we really want to explore the sense of what a mythic life is. And the idea is that we do have a soul intention for this life that brings us on our path, and that things happen along the way. We have our stories, and that we really are on an epic journey. I was recently watching some of your YouTube videos on your YouTube channel to really highlight the philosophy and traditions that you practice with, tantra yoga. And, I was grasping at remembering, what your story was that brought you into this path. Like, where did you grow up? What was your journey?
Okay. I grew up in Brazil, and I was in one state, Minas Gerais. I was born in Rio, but I was living in that other town called Belo Horizonte. So at the time I was doing my university, and I studied civil engineering. So I was in the last year. And, when you are going to go in that transition from studying to work, there is all these questions start coming in the mind. So I had a question, what life is really about and what am I going to work for? And, those days, no Google, no internet. So we go to a library. So I went to the library. I looked for the philosophy section, and I said, let me read some of the books and see what I can get out of it. And I didn't have a particular book that I was looking for, so I just pick up at random, sometimes in an order or some here and there. And I take that book home and I read it. So I read a lot of Kant, Nietzsche, and all these philosophers. But okay, there are interesting things, but I was not really yet finding what I was looking for. One day I got one book, which was The Philosophy of Yoga. And I was interested, so I took that book home and I started reading, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting because it's telling about something that you do, a practice that you do, and then you get answers from that, or you start understanding deeper your own self. And I felt it was a good proposal. And I thought I should practice yoga. I mentioned to a friend of mine, and he said, oh, I'm also interested. And he offered to look for a place to practice. And a few days after we met, and he said that he only found places where people do yoga as an exercise. And that's a little bit what happens in the society here, that people think of yoga as an exercise.
Yeah.
And okay, I said, let's start doing what we found. So we there was one studio that he particularly liked, and that studio offered to start a new group for us if we had enough people. So like his girlfriend, another friend, and another one, we made a group and we started practicing. And that was the yoga exercises, the relaxation. It felt good, but I wanted something deeper. So I asked the teacher what to do. And the teacher, she said that meditation would be good for me, but she didn't teach it. And I asked, so what to do? She said, you wait, because in our studio, some teachers come from time to time, you can learn. I said, what should I do in the meantime? She suggested me to read the book, Autobiography of a Yogi, which is a well-known book by Paramahansa Yogananda. I started reading the book, and Yogananda is a monk, and he was describing his experiences with meditation and different practices of yoga. And I, that time, thought that, oh, maybe that's what I want to do. I want to become a monk, like Yogananda.
Oh, wow.
But, it didn't develop exactly in that way. A few days after, a monk from this organization that I work with, which is called Path of Bliss in English, and one monk came to the yoga studio. He talked to us. He offered to teach us, and he invited to a talk in the law university, the School of Law. I went. I was quite interested, and then I started practicing. I did have expectations that, you start practicing and immediately you are experiencing some other states of mind, but that's not exactly what happens. And the monk was clear to me that, no, you have to practice every day, and after some time, you will start feeling the effects. So I did follow that, and I'm here continuing practicing. And eventually I became a monk like him and everything. Yeah.
With that, at what point did that take you away from Brazil? Where did you go to?
Okay.
What was your journey?
So after I learned the meditation and I continued practicing and I got more involved, I took some local trainings. Then I thought I really want to be a monk. And then I decided to go to India. And I went to India on a one-way ticket with the idea that I'm going there and I'm going to join the training to become a monk. And at that time, my teacher, my guru, was still alive. He was not the one who gives the training, but he was there in India. So I went and I met him, and then I went to the training. And the training was quite quick those days. Less than a year, I had already finished, and I was like, we get posted in different places. So I was sent to Africa. So from Brazil, I went to India and took the training. Then I went to Africa.
Yeah. Did you ever feel any intuitive or spiritual link to Africa? What decided for you to go there?
Well, not really. I'd never imagined I would go to Africa. It was at that time the organization chooses the places that the new monks will go, and so they decided that I should go to Kenya, and so I went to Kenya. I stayed there for some time, maybe I think about a year or less in Kenya, and then they decided that I should go to Zambia, which is a little bit south, not too far.
Yeah.
So I went there, and I stayed also another year or so there. And by that time, they decided to send me to Europe. So then I went to Europe. In Africa, one work that we did, because we not only teach meditation and spiritual practices, yoga, we also do social service. So Africa, I did teach. I used to go to schools and universities, but the main work was in the social service. And for that, we had, at the time, started many preschools. So because the government used to give free education from the first grade. But before that, the kids would be abandoned especially in the poor areas that the mothers were busy. They would just be there playing.
Yeah.
They wanted some education, so this preschools was on demand. So we started a number of preschools in poor areas in the outskirts of Nairobi. And also I did travel to other cities like Mombasa and Kisumu, and I did start some schools also in Kisumu at the time.
Yeah. Where I grew up was outside of Nevada City, California, and up in the foothills of the Sierras there, almost a neighboring property was the Ananda Farms. And, I grew up really being surrounded by a lot of people that held practices, but my family really never held those kinds of practices. My mom more focused her spiritual path on Zen Buddhism because, her the one that really influenced her was Gary Snyder. He was a beatnik poet. And like, for me, it was interesting to go through my healing crises that led me to theta healing and to go and learn from Vienna and how she became such a major influence on my life and teacher. And it's always a really interesting thing with this more modern day spiritual practice where like we have so many resources, right? We have all of these different modalities and techniques and philosophies. And it's like, sometimes I feel there's so much that gets also lost in that without having something that is more of like a clear teacher and having that place of guru. And yet sometimes there's those layers to that type of relationship where how do you grow without also being handicapped by your teacher? How do they hold space? And I know there's so much, controversy on this of sometimes teachers kind of lose their way a little bit or go to ego. Like, what do you feel is important about really finding a teacher?
Well,
what's important for you with that?
The philosophy tells that is like, philosophy is given in shlokas, like verses in Sanskrit. So about finding a guru, the verse is something like this, that when someone has a very intense desire, then the guru, the right guru will come. And I experienced that in the sense that on that time where I was thinking that I would go to India and look for a guru. That was like, I had basically finished my studies, and one day my father asked okay, you are finishing your studies. Would you like to do like a post-graduation, like a specialization? And then he said, you can go abroad, maybe go to US or go to Germany. And my reply was something like, do you really want to know what I'm planning? And he said, yes. I said, I'm planning to go to India and look for a guru. So that was like my planning. And shortly after, I met the monk. like I am today. And this monk was from the Philippines originally. And I thought he is the guru initially. And but after, when he was giving me the teachings of meditation, he explained that his guru is in India. And then I thought, oh, and eventually, after some time, I did go to India and I did meet my guru. And but my feeling is that when somebody has a very deep desire, the right teacher comes. And that's what I experienced. And nowadays, there are many people who promote themselves as gurus and things like that.
Yeah.
So a lot now is in the plate of the disciple, because as a disciple, one has to develop that discrimination that, okay, this person is the right person, this person is not the right person. We really need to take that step, because as you mentioned, there is so much out there and there are so many proposals.
Yeah.
And it's not that easy to find out what's the right proposal and what's the wrong proposal.
Yeah. So on this journey with exploring consciousness and working in this philosophy, you know, on your website, you know, pathofbliss.com, it talks about also bringing in, like, from philosophy and spiritual practice all the way to modern science, and like finding these bridges. I found it fascinating. I was watching your YouTube video on, you know, your description of tantra and how you were going into these, you know, both myths, these mythological stories of these gods and goddesses and like their definitions, but you were bringing it into also that sense of practice. And, you know, as a philosophy, bringing it into a spiritual practice instead of it just being a myth story, fascinated me, because like I find it's almost like a mystical coding, you know. Like I was hearing things in your message around like actualization of free will, and like I think it was, and you're having this description of the iceberg versus the water, how they're both exposed to the same cold and the same concentration, but one aspect formed into the iceberg and versus the water, and like how there's places of how we actually come into form and like hold the sense of self and then hold the sense of free will. When you teach, do you kind of break it down that way so it can be brought into like what is the structure in the practice from the philosophy into spiritual practice for you?
Right. You know, like the practice, the meditation. So meditation is a process that you will go within, and the idea is that you will connect with the, let's say, the supreme consciousness. So let's say that me as an individual, I have an individual consciousness, which is small, like a drop of water. But let's suppose that there exists this cosmic consciousness that is like the ocean. So now this drop will merge with the ocean, and that is the unification or the state of yoga. And okay, so maybe that's like the philosophy. Now we come to practice. So the practice, I'm a human being. I'm living on a day-to-day life. Let's say I have a meal, and then I develop my body, and then maybe I close my eyes, I do meditation, or I'm doing my daily work using my mind. So how this all connects? Is spirituality something completely apart that, okay, now is my moment of spirituality and now I'm living my physical life? So what is the connection of everything, and how is it all one thing, you know? So the philosophy says that, let's say consciousness, let's say cosmic consciousness, maybe creates. So let's say that cosmic consciousness is something infinite without any variation. But then comes cosmic mind. Cosmic mind is, while cosmic consciousness, there is no variation. In cosmic mind, mind thinks. So cosmic mind thinks. So now cosmic mind will think the world, or will think the creation. So as it starts thinking, so mind needs some elements to create. So those are the fundamental factors, like say ether, air, light, liquid, solid. So then if we have pure consciousness, then mind, then the factors, and then from the factors, it creates the...
And that's the 5 elements, correct?
Yeah, with the 5 elements, putting them together, combining, makes the world or the universe.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we have that philosophy. So from consciousness comes cosmic consciousness, comes cosmic mind, comes the cosmic factors, put them together, create. Now we have the universe. Yeah. And the universe, let's say the planets are formed. Let's think about the Earth. There are different beings. It started more primitive, a little bit more developed. Plants, animals, humans. So our planet developed all these beings and came to humans. Now I'm a human being and I want to realize my cosmic, let's say, inheritance, or that connection with that cosmic consciousness. So now I enter the process of meditation. So when we meditate, first thing we have to withdraw from what's happening outside us. So closing the eyes, sitting in silence, not giving attention to the sounds. So that is like withdrawing from the world, you know, from the universe. So I now withdrew from the universe and I'm only inside myself. I don't hear anything what's happening. I don't perceive anything outside. My whole existence is me. Then I needed to withdraw from the factors. And you know, in yoga physiology, subtle physiology, each chakra is related to one of the factors. So the first chakra is related to the solid factor, second chakra, liquid, third chakra, luminous, fourth chakra, the air, and fifth chakra is the ether. So in the process of meditation, one has to do that kind of withdrawal also. And that kind of withdrawal will take you from, like withdrawing from all the factors, then you come to pure mind. And then through meditation, mantras, you remind yourself that you are not mind, that you are consciousness. To
lift from the third eye up to the crown.
Yes. So in that way, the philosophy is saying that from consciousness came mind in the cosmic level. From mind came the factors.
Yeah.
And so then created the universe. Now I'm a human being. I withdraw from the universe. Then I withdraw from the factors. I come to pure mind. And I withdraw from mind into consciousness. So in that way, in my individual movement, I completed the return to the cosmic consciousness, and that's the state of self-realization or the state of yoga.
And through that journey, through the elements and the mind, is there a direction of vitality or life force that kind of threads it through? Like,
yeah, that's like in tantra, there is the concept of the vital force is called the kundalini.
yeah.
So is the process of withdrawal from the elements is the process of raising that kundalini, which is consciousness, raising the consciousness from the lowest chakra or from the solid element to the ethereal element, and then withdrawing from all the elements into the mind.
Yeah.
So that vital force is the what is called the kundalini, and where the origin. Okay, let's say that I will introduce another element, that our human body and our human mind and our human structure is like a machine. It's a bio machine, mental machine, and a spiritual machine, which is transforming physical into mental and mental into spiritual. So that this machine is transforming, let's say, the food I eat, the water, that is creating my body, the physical elements of the body. But the body has different elements, each one more subtle than the other. And when the body creates the most subtle element, that in Sanskrit is called shukra, that most subtle element, which is physical, at a certain point gets transformed into mental substance, which is we call ectoplasm in our philosophy. I know that there is different concepts that use this same word, ectoplasm, but in our concept is, let's say, the mental substance. Okay, so physical substances is more something we can touch, and then it comes to mental substance. And those are particles of mind. And through meditation, those particles of mind are transformed into consciousness.
Yeah.
So there is a process of transformation from the solid that we eat into the mind, and from the mind into the consciousness or spirit.
I remember I was in a class, and this one scientist from Italy, who was also taking the theta healing course, he was explaining the biology of a nervous cell and how within every dendrite, which is like the arms, the tentacles of the cell that create our neural connections, that there are these tubes that have a spinning element inside the tube that is going through a process very similar to a computer of coding, where, you know, our computer programs, everything is like either 0 or 1, and it has a certain code to it. And he says these tubes are actually creating the coding, and it is choosing not 0 or 1, but 0 and 1, that it is doing what's called the quantum mechanic of creation. And that when we're producing and creating electrons, we're producing actual particles of atoms that is creating our nervous system. And through that nervous system, we are then having all this sensory and thinking that we're here and experiencing the world around us. But what we're not experiencing it, we're actually creating it as an illusion. And we become so attached to it. So like this process that you're describing of actually withdrawing is so interesting, because other meditations, it's more like become detached but stay in sensory. And a lot of modern meditations, like even the one that I practice of theta healing, is a guided visualization, right? So you're actually imagining and you're engaging in the mind. You're doing some breath work with it, but like it has its own mechanics, has its own tools. So this philosophy and practice, like there's some important aspects to it. And tantra being and one of the origins of yoga, and like I'm curious with what you're seeing in the world around like this modern metaphysics and these yoga practices and all these different forms of yoga that are more exercise, and all these books around tantra being really focused on sexual. Like for you as a monk, how do you help direct people through that, what they're creating, and like help them refocus it?
Yes. Yeah, that is all that situation. And there is a lot of misunderstanding about Tantra.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, like a lot of yoga today, of course, they have the asanas, which are the exercises, they are good. They
Mm-hmm.
have an effect. They work on let's say that the body is the vehicle. So you need a good vehicle to move. So for that, those exercises are very important. But that's not everything. One analogy that I do sometimes is like the yoga is like of today, the asanas will make your body good, but you have to use it. It's like you have a car and you take very good care of it and you have it very nice, very clean, everything is working, but it's in the garage. So you need to use it. So you have to take it out for the ride. So now that we did all the exercises and all the purifications and our body is fine, we have to take it for the ride. And where is the ride? That's the meditation. So now, Tantra, the practices of meditation in Tantra are very deep. And one aspect of Tantra is also physical restraint. So when, like in our, let's say, philosophy, Shiva was like the father of Tantra. There was Tantra before him, but he kind of made it into a system. This figure of Shiva in other, let's say, philosophies or traditions, sometimes he's not considered like he was a human being living here and gave all these teachings. It's more he was a god or like that. But anyway, for us, he was a very advanced yogi, and then he systematized Tantra. And he told, okay, if you cannot control your British tendencies, it is difficult. So there are two ways. One is the more crude aspect, let's say sex. Instead of abandoning to sex, overindulging, there will be some certain control. But that is to have more restraint and not to do more. So that is not the practice. There is to restraint. And that is the more external Tantra. And the more internal Tantra, the practice is to withdraw and go deep within. So there is a lot of misinterpretation happened in this field. And that misinterpretation happens because people read the scriptures and they don't understand the symbolism of it, and so they interpret in a certain way. But the idea here is that with the mantras and the practices, one can withdraw deeper and deeper into the mind. And the mind also has layers. So you need to withdraw from the external layers of the mind to the more internal layers until you can withdraw into consciousness. So it's a long process and it's very detailed.
These directing of energies, you know, because we are in this culture that is very linked into the sense of pleasure, you know, and especially depleting pleasures, to actually give back to the body and to redirect that energy so that pleasure can come into more of a place of bliss. Could you describe this place of bliss?
Okay, so a little bit, let's say that bliss. Okay, let me take one step back in the redirecting the energies. Let's say that I was mentioning about the different elements. So when we come to the most subtle element, which is shukra, if one is very, like, as we mentioned about tantra being a lot on sex, people are understanding in that way. What happened with the shukra is if one is engaged a lot in sex, shukra gets transformed into all the liquids and fluids necessary for sexual activity. And less shukra becomes ectoplasm. If there is less ectoplasm, there is less consciousness. So it means, so the process of transformation here gets stopped. So now, when shukra becomes ectoplasm, then through meditation, when ectoplasm becomes consciousness, then there is bliss. Because consciousness is bliss. So when the transformation of ectoplasm into consciousness happens, one feels bliss. That's the feeling that is generated. So if one...
And so as that directs through each chakra, you have to work through it not becoming that element, like to redirect it so it can continue on its path. Yeah. And you were describing for a moment there around the levels of thought. This is one place where theta healing really is focused a lot on, of building intuition and spiritual connection with divine, with creator, along with reprogramming the subconscious beliefs. But it's pulling and replacing the subconscious beliefs, so that it isn't constricting and stagnant. In tantra meditation, to work through the subconscious, are there certain factors? Are there certain practices in meditation to work through the mind?
Oh, okay, yeah. You know, that is the mind. Okay, talking about the mind. So in tantra, mind will have different levels. And we also have different chambers. Okay, so let's say the levels will be, the conscious mind. Okay, so the conscious mind is the one we are using now. We are talking, we are controlling the motor organs and the sensory organs. That's the conscious mind. And that conscious mind is very much related to the first chakra. Then comes the subconscious mind. The subconscious is the part of the intellect, reasoning and dreaming, deep thought, all that comes into the intellect. And that's in the subconscious. Then there is the supramental, we call supramental. It's beyond the subconscious. And that part is where there is creativity, genius, all these special capacities. And in that part also is accumulated all the reactions, you know, the action and reaction, like from past actions, we accumulate lots of reactions, let's say karma. That also gets accumulated in that part of the mind, or that's the first expression of it. And if we can go beyond that, then comes a layer of wisdom or special knowledge. That's the little Buddha we have inside, has all this wisdom. And if we can access it, it's in this fourth level of the mind. And the fifth level of the mind is the level of, we call it the golden layer. That's like the last level that is bringing consciousness into the physical, connecting the consciousness with the physical. And there, if one experiences a lot of bliss and peace. But all these are still the objectivated part of the mind. Then there is let's say, the ego, or the part of the mind that has the capacity to do, the I do. Those 5 layers are in the objective, done I, the I do, and then the I am. So now, in the process of meditation, one has to see how to go through those 5 layers, how to reach to the I do, and how to direct the I do to the I am.
Yeah.
And therefore freeing from the external. And that's where it comes to experience the cosmic level. And the consciousness is bliss. It's just another name for bliss.
Yeah. As we work through this, I feel like I'm being taken on such a wild journey through, these levels of mind and consciousness. I remember in your YouTube video, you opened with talking about that sense of oneness, and like in meditations, I know when I really am connecting in and feeling that sense of bliss, it feels so expanding, where I don't feel a sense of separation from being in my body and actually spiritually feeling the environment around me. Like it has this expansion to it. It's so beautiful and so important to really explore this sense of practice. And I feel there's so many out there that are really always feeling very called to, like, what's my purpose? What is purpose? And purpose always feels so singular and driven. It feels like there's a lot lost in the word, versus this other direction that I feel you're taking us on, of actually having that place of not like suppressing restriction where you hold back, but actually this really important element of devotion, dedication, having that commitment, that and like structure to a practice. And that's something that I hope people are really getting from this, is that some of these traditions, we've gone on such a journey to strip them away out of feeling suppressed by structures out there in our lives, yet they're designed to give us a roadmap instead of trying to recreate the wheel. And what I really appreciate is how you are bridging this gap from these deep traditions to a clearer practice for people. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And the work that you're doing is phenomenal.
What I have talked so far is like a crash course.
Yeah.
It is, I did say so much, very deep,
Yeah.
so difficult to, how to say. But
It's
I
definitely going to be a lot for people to digest.
yes,
And
yes.
that's good. It's really good to hear those deep elements to it so that like we can have that reflection, because so many of the people that listen to this podcast, they're in that creative place, and many of people that I work with, they do not only go to the physical yoga classes for their physical body, but they do go on retreats, they do go deeper into meditation, and it feels like there is a major gap there between the exercise yoga and all of the yoga studios versus people that are going deeper and bringing those elements of tradition in with the meditations, with the breath work, with chanting, and with diet. So those elements really are so important, and they surround it as a discipline, as a structure. And I think that's so important these days, is to actually find teachers that can carry something bigger than just one element of a practice.
In the scene now, in the yoga and meditation scene, spiritual, there is a lot of Vedic teachings. The Vedic teachings is a little bit different from the tantric teachings, even though on the surface some words may be the same and something, but the tantric system is a system of experimenting, of really, how to say, you sit there and you want to touch consciousness. It's not just you want to sing about it, or you want to ask it to come in your life, or you want to, let's say, propitiate that it will happen, but you want to really, let's say, bring your mind from the physical into the mental, and then go through all the mental levels, and then bringing the mind to the consciousness. So it's a direct effort to do that. And the practice is done in that way. And it's taught in levels. Let's say you start with a light practice, and then you go to a deeper one, in a deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And in layers, it takes you deeper and deeper and deeper. And the idea is that somebody who learns a little bit should practice it. And by practicing, that person is creating the base to learn the next level. And just like when you go to the gym, they will give you maybe 20 pounds. And then when you manage the 20, they may go to 40. You manage 40, go to 50. They will not give you 50 on the first day. So in the same way, Tantra is in that way. You are giving certain practice. As you practice, you go deeper. And so different layers get developed, and then you go deeper in different layers in that way. So it's very practical process, while the Vedic process is more rituals, more external, more taking the senses, and
And as you go deeper with it, I know it goes into that place with tapping in with those mystic places, and it can be incredible how it changes our life and what it invites in.
And according to tantric philosophy, whatever is happening in our life, the world, all this is happening to teach us. It means it's part of the process. Whatever is happening in our life is part of that process. So who we meet, what we do, and all this is everything designed in such a way that it will awaken us into the path of realization.
And there's these elements that they can seem subtle because how large they are. They do make up the universe. And it's not as I think you've said before, not in this podcast, but it's not like there's a creator that created and set back and let nature run its course. Like, it's still self-actualizing. We are an element of that process of it, you know. So all of these, and this is something that's so beautiful about the stories, about the myths, is that they are a way of getting clear of these roadmaps of being and living, that they are in all of the elements around us, right? And when we actually can be guided by a teacher, then you're empowered to get through those levels, because we do run into resistance. You know,
Yeah.
if I go and just go, oh, I'm going to put together my own workout routine, and I'm most likely going to injure myself. But if I actually go and receive guidance, somebody watches my form, you know, having that support, having structure, it's something so important to actually find a teacher to help give clarity, to give direction, to help you understand at what level you are, so that you're not trying to go for the 60-pound weights off the bat. You know, pick up the 10 pounds to start with.
Yes.
And that is in meditation. You know, that is getting through those initial hurdles of levels of thought, levels of breath, maybe places in our life to have restraint. And so I just love what you're doing and what you're creating. I haven't had the chance. You're only up the road an hour or so from me, you know, up in upstate New York, creating a beautiful retreat center. I know you're building and fundraising for, creating this beautiful space for people to come, and you're running classes there currently. Yes.
Yes, we already functioning with some smaller buildings that we have. So we already have weekend retreats and other activities. Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful region. I'm, you know, further down the Hudson Valley, but it's absolutely gorgeous up this way. So for anybody looking to really have that deeper experience and support, check out Dada Rainjitananda and his space at pathofbliss.com. He has so much going on. And we are Mythic Life, free thinkers, deep feelers, courageous trailblazers. We own our myth with our vibes, how we think, feel, and act. We believe that love is a given, not something earned. That spiritual is sexy, kindness is cool, and earth is sacred. We walk our talk, and when life gets real, we heal. We choose our path and make it epic. And everybody has superpowers, and we are all connected. And I just want to thank you for coming on here and enlightening us with these huge aspects, and reminding us of the importance of really connecting and finding that path to bliss. So thank you so much, Dada.
Thank you, Eric.
And I will be coming up soon, I promise. I want to come and see you in your space. And for anybody listening, if this is your first time, please subscribe. We do have these podcasts coming out on the second and fourth Monday of every month, as we explore these amazing topics here at Mythic Life. And for anybody new, if you want to check out our healing circles, we have virtual healing circles once a month, and some really great events to introduce you to theta healing. And we're so excited to be holding this space. So thank you so much. And thank you all for joining. We'll see you soon.